And I
Yeah.
do like talking about it. And I'll probably cry. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people struggling that, if
Mhm.
somebody can hear this and just feel like, oh my God, there's a light at the end of the tunnel or whatever. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
it brings a little more meaning to it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to be able
Mm-hmm.
to change things for
Mm-hmm.
someone else, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I appreciate that. Yes, indeed. And that is the purpose of these conversations. Yeah, is to try to provide a little comfort. And I love what you say, a light at the end of the tunnel. You're listening to Conversations Along the Way, part of the Stoic Mom Project. At the SMP, we embrace the Stoic principle of the obstacle is the way, or that we can take the hardest things in our lives and use them as a way to learn and grow into the best versions of ourselves. If you're here, you're likely a growth-oriented parent of a young person who's adopted a trans identity. I'm Stoic Mom, a life coach and educator who is also a growth-oriented parent of an adult trans-identified daughter. The conversation you're about to listen to is part of a special series in which I talk with other moms determined to find healthy ways of navigating gender ideology in their homes. Moms whose stories and strategies may inspire you. I hope you find value and wisdom from my conversation with this Stoic Mama. I've thought a bit about those questions you asked me and kind of based on where the conversation goes, they might come up, but if not, what I was thinking of doing was using them as a- an inspiration for a post, if that would be okay with you, to kind of post those questions and how I would answer them.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's great because I mean, like I had told you, I mean, I think you have a lot of wisdom, but has the rubber hit the road? I
mhm,
think
mhm,
so that's some of it is that I couldn't hear your message for a while because I'm like, yeah, I'd be like that too if my daughter hadn't medicalized.
mhm, mhm,
I'd be like,
mhm.
yeah, okay, let her explore, let her figure out her life. But, and the shit hits the fan when they medicalize, because it's irreversible.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should just go there.
Well, then I'm going to start crying. So,
Which you said you're okay with, yeah? Like
yeah,
that's
yeah, oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah,
The
yeah,
listeners have heard me cry more than
yeah,
once.
yeah,
So, um, I think if we could all get more comfortable with crying, things things would be better.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Shit hits the fan, and you're not the first to have said that to me. That it can be difficult listening to somebody whose child has not medicalized talk about this stuff.
yep.
And yeah, yeah, that makes sense. One of the questions you asked is how do you not fall into despair once in a while? And are you ever angry? Those are the first two. And it's interesting because I certainly spent the first couple of years, I would say, in desperation
Yeah.
with intermittent rage, you
Mm-hmm.
know, fantasizing about what I would do to the surgeons
Mm-hmm.
who perform these procedures,
Right.
Um,
Were you, though, angry at your daughter?
so she got to see some of the rage for
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
You
Was it
know,
directed towards her, though?
um, it was usually born out of frustration,
Yeah.
where I didn't feel like she was listening to me. Like nothing I was saying was sinking in for her. And I think what was coming clear to me is the limited influence I was going to have over this at that point in the game. And that scared the shit out of me,
Right.
right? Which I think that's what hits most of us is that, oh my gosh, I can't just turn this ship around,
Right.
and then we go into that full on pursuit mode and get our PhDs in the ideology. And
Which was actually somewhat helpful for me. I have to say.
I agree, me too. And that came up in in the form,
Hmm.
in your responses, is that you needed to make some sense of this.
Even though it's irrational, I needed to find out where we got here with this,
Hmm.
with the ideology, like where it kind of came from, where it is in the culture now, and what it all means. And it was
Yes.
really hard to read it all and not be completely biased. I mean, I wanted to be
Hmm.
like, only
Hmm.
read the stuff that was on what I, thought I was
Hmm.
going to believe and what I believe.
Hmm.
But I tried to stay pretty open. And I didn't really, though, waver from what, thinking that it's really a very harmful ideology.
Yes, I love that you use the words making sense because that is absolutely what I had to do too. I needed to make sense of it. It's just the way I operate. I think I think a lot of moms can kind of get stuck in there, if that makes sense. And
Oh, yeah.
it's about beyond making sense and more about needing something to put the responsibility for this into, if that makes sense. Like it's a coping mechanism. I think the pursuit of information can be.
Yes. But for
Hmm.
me, it went from global to then personal, or maybe
Hmm.
both channels were happening at the same time. I'm like, universally, where were we with, the trans stuff? And then personally, where were we in our family with it?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I had to explore both. And I
Yes.
don't have all the answers now, but where I've landed, I'm pretty comfortable with both. Not that I'm comfortable with the ideology. I'm comfortable with how I've made sense of the irrational and how I've made sense with how our family and our daughter landed here.
Okay. Okay. Um, I'd like to dive into how you've made sense of it. I would say for myself, just to kind of finish answering that question that you asked
Hmm.
about, the despair and the anger. And again, like you have mentioned, my daughter has not medicalized. And so that is absolutely a factor to be considered. Um, for me, what this whole circumstance demanded of me was a full reorientation, honestly. I had to reorient to the difficult things in my life. And part of that was figuring out what I had faith in and coming to a faith in life itself, that there is some intelligence going on and that I needed to surrender to something larger than myself and trust that we are moving through this really difficult thing as a species even, that that sort of obstacle is the way. Like we are meant to learn something from this, that it's not just about this thing, which I'm sure you probably gather too.
Yep, yep.
There's way more factoring in here, and this is a communication. What our kids, what this generation is going through is a communication to us that we are meant to learn from.
Yeah,
And that's difficult because there is damage being done, right? There's
right.
damage on the ground. Humans are being harmed, physically by
Yeah,
this. And and that sucks. And I don't, it's like, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's painful. It's painful. And I'm pretty certain that w- were my daughter to move toward medicalization, I would be thrust again into a lot of those emotions. But I think part of it too is I've become quite practiced at what's known as the witness mind, at being able to kind of it's kind of that the aim of meditation, of being able to think of myself in parts, if that makes sense.
uh-huh,
And I talk about this in one of my articles called Mostly Fine. And it's just about recognizing the parts of me that are in pain and being tender with those parts and understanding that that's what's required, that our emotions serve a purpose but also not being consumed by them, right? So like allowing those parts that need to be snarky or need to be, I get my feelings hurt sometimes,
Right,
but then noticing that, oh, that's that part that gets her feelings hurt when this happens,
right.
and being gentle with that part of myself. So it's,
That's really tough though when you're really in the throes of despair about
mhm,
it.
I'm sure.
That's
Hmm.
and I would say it took me a couple of years.
Hmm.
We haven't been at this as long as a lot of people. We're at, about 3.5 years. But our daughter medicalized really quickly.
Mm.
And
And
so
she was how old? I'm sorry, when she broke the
22,
news, 22 when she broke the
22
news. So you
by
had
text,
little
by text.
by text.
And
Yeah.
we were very, whatever you're going through, we love you,
Hmm.
whatever's happening, we'll
Hmm.
figure it out, and then, yeah. And honestly, at first I was open to, okay, what is this? What's going on? And
Hmm.
her story was so full of lies that, it was just one red flag after another.
So full
So,
of lies. Yeah. Can you say,
well,
when you say lies, was she lying or there were just a lot of things that were not factual to you in her story? Does that make sense? Was it an
no, I
intentional?
don't know. Oh,
Okay.
well,
Were
I
the
think
lies
she made her
intentional on her part?
narrative to uphold
Yes.
her,
Yes.
identity, that
Yes.
she always had boy friends who were boys, which I mean, we did the sleepovers. It wasn't true. I mean, there was just
Hmm.
no truth in it at all. And all of my other children could be like, no, that's not true. The one thing about this is you really start questioning reality, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, what is real, what's true, what's not true. And you're right. I have come to a point where I really have a much firmer grip or grasp of what I value
Hmm. Hmm.
and what I, yeah, want to work towards in my life and in, my relationships with others. And if the truth
Hmm.
isn't there, it's not worth it's not worth it to, to stay in relationship. We need truth and, you know, so
So I'm hearing a lot of clarity in your understanding of what's happening and then your own value system, what's
yeah,
important to you, what I think what serves as solid ground for you is maybe what I'm hearing
right.
too.
But
Hmm.
did you find, you said it was like a reorientation for you. I found it was more like clouds were lifted. Like
Mm.
when I realized what I truly valued, meaning,
Hmm.
now here I might cry. I don't know why. Like I really truly value like Mother Nature.
Hmm.
Really truly value the truth. It was like, oh yeah, I mean that's who I've been all along, but now I
Hmm.
have it, it's completely clear to me.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like I reoriented, it was more like there was this complete clarity of, yeah, this is what my, 60 years on this earth have like come, the truth that has come to me about it. So and it feels good.
Hmm.
It really feels good. It feels good to say these are my values and this is what I believe is worthy of my attention and time and love, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Hmm. And so then that becomes a pretty solid compass, doesn't it? That
hmm.
helps you choose what you allow into your life and what you let go.
It also was a solid compass for my relationship with my daughter.
Say more. Hmm.
Because, she has her belief system and, now I firmly have mine. And, where I don't necessarily respect hers, it's her belief system right now. And
Hmm.
so, if she wants to be in a deeper relationship with me, she has to acknowledge that this is my belief system too. that, I believe that the truth really matters. And I know that some of them will say, okay, well, my truth is that I was meant to be, a boy or a man. But I mean, do I believe that there's some objective truth in this world? And I do. And
Mm,
I do.
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
do believe that, certain things matter. So,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and are true. Like the sun rises from the east.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Humans can't change sex. Um, that you can feel any way you want to. And
mm-hmm,
that's your subjective truth. It's not
mm-hmm,
objective. So, yeah, I didn't know all these things were inside of me. I didn't really need to go through this experience to find them out. But I did. So,
hmm. So when you say I didn't really need to go through this experience to find them out, is what you're saying is you would have been fine not finding these things out had your daughter not chosen
um, yes, I
this?
would have been. Life was good. I was happy. I,
Mm-hmm.
felt I had some depth in my life anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now do I feel like I have more? Yes. Do I feel like I am more skeptical of things? Yes. Could I have kept blinders on and gotten through life? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it was painful. And it still continues to be painful. It's very,
Mm-hmm.
very painful. It is the most painful
Mm-hmm.
experience I've went through,
Yeah.
hands down. And I'm not, I had some pain growing up. I didn't have I mean, we live in this country. Most of us have fairly privileged lives compared to the world.
Uh-huh.
But I had some pain growing up. I had a son that was, really sick for a while. My parents got divorced when I was like 12. But yeah, this was hands down the most painful thing I've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I view it as self-harm. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that one is challenging. And I've considered the same thing, and we know they have a different narrative around it.
yes.
Um, that being said, it sounds like your daughter had some other issues going on where,
Yeah, she didn't until she left home for college.
okay,
I mean,
okay.
a little bit at home, but nothing, you wouldn't have thought anything, I mean, just the typical story, great
Mm-hmm,
student, a boyfriend, friend group got smaller, towards the end of high school, best friend with anorexia. But
mm-hmm,
went to college probably for a major she shouldn't have, floundered a little bit and was really into the whole social justice stuff in college, um, and not floundered academically, but she was in a theater program, another typical
uh-huh,
story.
mm-hmm,
I mean, and then developed an eating disorder in college.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
yeah, so she, how I view it is she traded one disorder for another. She
mm-hmm,
decided that, the eating disorder and all the distress in her life and any self-hatred that she had was that she was meant to be a man. And I
mm-hmm,
say man, she was 22. She will say
mm-hmm,
boy, but I, no. Um, and yeah, so she had some stuff going on, but we were starting to really address it, and then COVID hit. So that just, yeah.
I'm curious if one thing that seems like a common thread, you say she says boy, but as a 22-year-old, we know that,
Yeah.
a male at that age is a man, right? But
I have other children, two of, yes. So
yes.
yes.
So it seems a common thread is a resistance to grow up, and that this is a way to stay kind of in need of special care.
Mhm. Yep.
Yes, rather than taking on what is expected of an adult in the world. That this seems a way and you're making sense of things. Does that resonate for you? Do you see
Um,
that going on with your daughter?
she has adulted fairly well, actually,
Mm-hmm.
in that, we have other kids and some of them are still on the payroll a little bit. And she has been off a bit, now back on because she's starting grad school. Um, but I think it was more that she wanted to be a victim. She wanted to be a victim. She wanted to, I mean, one of my other daughters would be like, I can't stand being with her. She's talking about how poor she is. And I know you're paying her rent,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I mean, she really wanted to be, and I think she still continues to want to be seen as oppressed and has, reading Marx and seeing the world in that lens. So.
And so how do you make sense of that? What would be the motive?
Um, well, it hurts to the narrative that some of these young people are being fed, that the world is divided between oppressors and oppressed. And, it hurts to think that you are part of the group that hurts other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Instead of viewing it as, we can't change the circumstances of our birth. And I'm going to take where I was landed and make the most of it and change things for people. It's much easier, much, much easier to go, no, 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 I'm one of the oppressed too.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's much easier. Can you say more about that? What makes it easier?
we
I would
don't have
agree
to
with you,
carry,
but I'm
yeah,
curious.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
carry the guilt of,
Mm-hmm.
that some of these young people have been told they should be carrying because their ancestors because they're, may have done bad things at some point, or because, they grew up with, resources, and money and, how dare they? So it's much easier to say, no, 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 I'm, disavow all that because I'm one of the oppressed also, so take me away from that. I have no guilt in that because I'm also an oppressed person.
Mm.
So I,
Okay.
yeah, I don't, and in my gut, I don't think she thinks about it in that fashion. We've had a couple of discussions about it a little bit. I don't think she thinks about it that deeply.
You don't think she thinks about it that deeply?
No,
Yeah.
no.
I would agree. I think that we
Yep.
end up thinking about it much more deeply than they do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yep.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yep.
That for them, it helps them, yeah, move through today's world,
Yep.
which is you described the narrative very well, And so how do I navigate through this
Right.
cultural landmine? Hmm. I'm excited to share that this episode of Conversations Along the Way is sponsored by Dream School, which is brought to you by the same three psychoanalysts who bring you the podcast This Jungian Life. For those who may not know, Lisa Marciano, author of the book Motherhood and one of the founders of Therapy First, is one of the co-hosts of This Jungian Life. The This Jungian Life podcast inspired me to start paying attention to the symbolism and meaning in my dreams. As a result, around my daughter's 18th birthday, I had a series of dreams that brought me much comfort and peace around trusting both her journey and the foundation we have provided her. I continued to spend time pondering my dreams and researching the symbols that appeared, and basically just hoped that I was, air quotes, doing it right. I finally gave myself the gift of Dream School and can confidently say it's inspired huge transformation in my life. It quickly deepened my appreciation for the wisdom my dreams offer me and increased my drive to learn more about Jungian philosophy and how I can use it to strengthen my coaching skill set. So not only do you learn how to, as they say, decode the language of metaphor and symbol, you'll learn quite a bit about Jung's ideas around human development over the lifespan, including his concept of individuation, a process that we're all invited to do in midlife that, well, adds more life to the rest of our lives. I could go on and on about the value of consciously engaging in our own midlife individuation process, but I'll save that for my posts on the Stoic Mom Project and my work in helping clients navigate their own unique individuation journeys. If you're interested in Dream School and what it might inspire in you, you can use the code STOICMOM15 at checkout for 15% off of Dream School tuition. That's Stoic Mom in all caps, followed by the digits 15. And now back to the conversation.
Which was another really piece that was really difficult for me. And I don't know if it is for you, but the whole rejection of the female,
Hmm.
being a woman. And that was something I had to really come to terms with,
Mm-hmm.
because I really felt it as a rejection of me too,
Mm-hmm.
and me as a woman. And she had, my daughter had really strong and varied female models. And,
Mm-hmm.
my mother, now not to throw another whole piece into this discussion, but my mother
It's
was a
okay.
lesbian,
Mm-hmm.
and grew up, in the 50s, and, got married because that's what you did. And then in the 70s, when things were, um, opened up for her, she fell in love and was in with the same person for over 30 years. And so
Mm-hmm.
my daughter had her as a model. My daughter
Mm-hmm.
has sisters who are not, na- yeah, who are navigating a little bit older. So they didn't have to navigate the social media aspect as young as my daughter, is my, the trans-identified daughter did. But they were also great role models, not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so to me, I'm like, what? What is she? Why? Why? Why reject the female? Because that was another thing I've learned about myself through this, is how important it is. And maybe I over-identify with my female, or being a woman, but it's very important to me.
Yeah, I don't think I over-identified with it prior to this. It absolutely drove home how much I value being a woman
Right, right,
and and brought forth much appreciation that maybe wasn't there before for
right,
me. Um, I do also sometimes wonder if it's if those strong role models are a little intimidating.
right,
And so sort of back to that uh, avoiding growing up or avoiding they feel like big shoes to step into, I think maybe. And so it's a
true.
way to not put those big shoes on
Yeah,
because it's scary. It's
yeah,
intimidating. Hmm.
yeah. It's just sad, so sad. It's really sad.
It is, it is sad. Um, and I guess by reorientation, I'm always asking that question of, and what are we meant to learn? And what are we meant to learn? As a culture, what are we meant to learn from this rejection of womanhood? Because I think we can make sense of that in other ways too. I do think in
Right.
many ways it's very scary to be a woman in today's world, and it's not surprising that they're trying to opt out.
Well, is this part of a backlash?
Hmm. And usually it is, isn't it? Right? The pendulum swings back and forth.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, you talked about, or some of the questions on the form, and I was going to give them to you in a little different order, is what has not worked for you?
Um, well, I think I had to move through the despair and anger,
Hmm.
and but I think that the anger definitely, am I holding on to it for so long, did not help my daughter and my relationship.
Hmm.
It also did not help my relationship with my other children, or
Hmm.
my relationship with my husband, really.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, women aren't supposed to be that angry. And boy, was I angry
Yeah.
at her,
Yeah.
not just at the world and at the ideology. I was really mad at her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she had everything,
Mm-hmm.
a loving, supporting family, every opportunity. If you want to go find yourself or figure out, you're confused, life's whatever. I mean, we would have helped her backpack through Europe, for a few
Mm-hmm.
months, take a
Mm-hmm.
gap year, do whatever, not take drugs and find yourself in a OR, in a
Mm-hmm.
having surgery to find
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was really angry.
Mm-hmm.
My husband could move through it better than me because he can compartmentalize better. And he also just thinks she has mental health issues. He really can just put it into a box of, she has mental health issues. What are we going to do? This is where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, clearly I haven't been able to do that. The anger has dissipated. Definitely. I'm not as angry at her at all, but it's been a couple years. I mean, it hasn't been four
Mm-hmm.
months or five
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of the anger too was about how she handled everything, how, the deception and dishonesty. Um, yeah, and the despair, it still pops up, and so does the anger, but it's not as frequently as it was. And now the anger seems to be more towards, the people upholding the ideology, really.
Okay. Yeah. So you were angry at her. You said earlier that when it was a rejection of womanhood, it felt like a rejection of you, right? So
Mhm.
it sounds to me like it felt really, excuse me, personal to you,
Right.
which I think too is a common experience among the moms that at least find their way to the Stoic Mom Project. We go
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
through, I'm sorry, a period where that's what we're grappling with, right? It
Yeah.
feels like a very personal rejection of us.
Yeah.
Um, but that you notice that the anger was damaging to the relationships. I
Oh,
guess
definitely.
yeah, I'm curious what that process was like for you. Was there an aha moment, or what helped you know that addressing the anger was going to be important?
Um, oh, this is gonna really make me cry. So one night we're at dinner, it's my husband, myself, and our youngest. And our
Hmm.
youngest is a boy. Um,
Hmm.
and it frequently came up in conversation. He's in college. It frequently was coming up in conversations with, me and the other her siblings. And I said, something like, well, does it bother you? Like, does it bother you that she thinks she's, a man now? Because, is it in some way um insulting to you that she didn't
Mm.
grow up, with what you had to deal with as a kid in the locker room and with sports? And he's somewhat of a nerdy kid. And he goes, no, no, it doesn't really bother me, Mom. What really bothers me is seeing how it's changed you.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, okay, guess I need to turn this, around. I need to change how I'm dealing with this so that my other kids still, and my husband still see me as, the loving person I am, not as this angry
Mm.
person at my daughter who's struggling with something.
Hmm.
So still took me many months after that comment to,
Hmm. Hmm.
get to a better place with it. What I first did was really stop talking about it with them.
Mm.
Because, they're of the age where whatever, Mom, people, whatever,
Hmm.
you gotta let people be who they're gonna be.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so that was hard because I just wanted everybody on my side. I saw
Yes.
it as us versus her and us versus
Hmm.
them. And now I'm like, it's okay. It's okay if they use the name that she wants to use. It's okay if they, accept what's going on because they have a different relationship with her than I do. But
Mm-hmm.
that was hard. That took a long time too. I think we have to be really tender with ourselves and not
Yes.
expect things to change quickly at all.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we're talking about emotional work, it is, it does require a tremendous amount of patience and tenderness and self-compassion. And I think there's a lot of information in those emotions and how powerful to have your son reflect that back to you.
Well, yes, and that he felt comfortable to say that
Yeah.
is good. It's good.
Yes. 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 Hold on.
Yeah, I think our children want to think they can do anything and mom will still love them. And so that was one of the other things I put on the form, right? Like, what
Mm.
is love? And,
Yes.
what does it mean to love your children? I mean, that's, is she the same person? I don't know. So she doesn't want
Mm.
to be.
She's trying to be not the same person.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it doesn't really have anything to do with looks, right? It has to do with behavior for me and where we are in relationship and what that looks like.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, you said our kids want to, how did you word that?
our,
About,
our kids want to believe that no matter what form they are, what they do, we will always, just have this unconditional love for them.
and is that not true? I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I certainly, yeah, I don't know. That is definitely still something I'm thinking about. Is my love, I mean, I love her. I would lay down my life for her, right?
Hmm.
That's without question. But has the love changed? Is there some conditions on
Mm.
love? Because we're human. I mean, we're human. And I mean, does that sound harsh? Does that sound awful?
It sounds honest. It sounds like you're asking yourself some really difficult questions. Hmm.
Especially when yeah, when I mean, I love her. This is not in question. What is in question has the nature of that love changed?
Mm.
Does it change as they grow anyway? I mean, certainly
Hmm.
there's a different love for your 6-month-old than there is for your 5-year-old, right? In a way. So has this one, because of her choices and the self-harm, has it changed? Has it really changed in a way that, my love for my other adult children hasn't changed? Is it really different? I don't know. That's certainly something I think about and grapple with. Is my actions, however, now that I'm not as angry, are certainly I'm consciously, you know, done with love. But I
Your
don't know what the
actions.
feeling,
Okay.
my
Gotcha.
actions, yes.
Yes. So
But
is
I
it
don't
the
know what the
quality of the love that we're talking
feelings
about
are
here?
behind that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That it's not a simple black and white, that
No.
the love remains, but it feels different toward her. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a little more guarded? Is that the difference? Or is it a little more? I'm just curious how you would describe the quality, if you could. What
It,
has changed?
you know how, like when you have a newborn, their love is so overwhelmingly physical and
Hmm. Hmm.
there, and like you can't, it's so, I mean, we're mammals, right? It's so almost like animalistic. You're just
Hmm.
now my love, and it's probably true for some of, my adult, because they're adult kids now. Now it feels more a choice. Like sometimes, loving your husband is a choice. You get angry, you get mad,
Hmm.
whatever. You're like, okay, I'm going to do the loving thing. And I never thought that I would have to choose to love one of my children.
Mm.
So maybe that's some of it. I just always
Mm-hmm.
thought it would just be there and be
Mm-hmm.
easy. And I did
Mm-hmm.
write that in the form too, like the ease is gone. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
That easy, oh, I
For
know
her.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know you. You were a part of me for 40 weeks and, breastfed you for 2 years. And uh, uh, yeah, that ease of just, and maybe for some people, that's not the case. Maybe they're just have more love in them. I don't know. But that's how I feel. I feel like I have to consciously be present in my love
Mm-hmm.
for her,
Mm-hmm.
which sucks,
Well,
which sucks.
it sucks. It's effortful, is what I'm hearing. You use the word, you have to be conscious in it. And I'm going to tiptoe into the gift of this here with the consciousness, how you have to choose to love her, that this has made it harder for you to love her. And now you have to choose it and be conscious in that and choose to do the loving thing rather than it just coming naturally. And
Right.
I guess I'm curious. One of the questions too on the form is how has this changed you? And part of that, you said I'm less judgmental. Um, I'm less tribal politically. I guess I'm just curious if that has factored into changes, like overall changes for you and how you are toward other people, not just your daughter. Has this impacted that at all?
Um, yes. Yes. I think I um and I think I always had some sense that we really know where no one else is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, to be gentle with people. I think I've always had that, as a guiding light for me, but I think this has really driven it home for me with other parents. When I see parents and struggling with, their teens or 20-year-olds, and I think we have no clue. We have no clue.
Yeah.
We have no clue what's going on in either everybody's heads, in their, minds. But I do deep down feel like most people are good and trying their hardest.
Hmm. I will say this had an incredibly humbling impact on me as a parent.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We have two grandkids,
Mm,
and they will, and I'm not, I am not in their face of, you need to do this, you need to do that. I really, and this was always a value too, that, there's a lot of different ways to parent and end up with lovely human beings, lovely, people who are going to make a difference in the world, or lovely people who are going to bring something to the world, a million different ways to parents. So I do not give a lot of advice to my daughter, who has two children.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and I know I'm doing a good job because my son-in-law will say to me, "Can you please give us more advice?"
Mm, mm-hmm.
And one day I said to him, "You really want advice from me? I have a daughter who's trans."
Mm,
And it was hard. I thought, why would they want advice from me? So in some ways, I guess I still do blame myself in some way for what happened,
mm,
which I know is wrong. But yeah, so it is humbling. It's humbling.
mm, mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I'd cry.
It's okay. Yeah. I think we need more crying on the show, to be honest. So
Well, then you're getting at least something, yeah, some emotion. So
that's real.
yeah, yep, yeah,
Yeah. I think that too is one of the most challenging parts of this is using it to judge ourselves, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and how many times in the beginning do you step back and go, what could I have done? What could I have done? What
Uh,
maybe I should have said this. Oh, we shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have done that. And there were definitely places that we could have put up somewhat roadblocks. And I'm talking because of the eating disorder and graduating from college during COVID, et cetera, where we could have put up more roadblocks and kept her in our nest a little bit more. But I
mm-hmm,
was definitely of the, oh my gosh, you're 21 years old, figure it out. Live your life, figure it out, honey. This was before the trans identity, not realizing that there were such awful things out there that could influence her. So, and I
yeah,
trusted her to find her way and figure things out. And also not realizing how disordered thought can be when you're starving your body. And, but, it worked out well for her older siblings. So I wasn't really that worried about it,
yeah,
meaning, figure it out. We're your big safety net. We're there for if you fall.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Is all of that still true? I guess. Like you're still the safety net. Maybe
Yes.
she had to move a little deeper into something.
100%.
Yes.
Yes. Which
You
she will
know,
deny and has distorted occasionally.
uh-huh.
She left a grad school program after a year saying that we weren't going to support her anymore, which is not true.
Hmm.
But she knows. She knows she knows. I
So
know
it
she.
sounds like there's some scapegoating there,
Hmm.
which I think too is
Goes.
normal
Yes.
and and maybe even beneficial in some ways. Um, and you recognize that she's using you as the like it sounds like she maybe that program wasn't working for her and so
Right.
she creates a narrative in her mind to make it about
Right.
you, right?
Right.
Which again I think is quite normal and not just for young adults. I think that is something most of us do,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And that is that lack of consciousness. And so I do think this has the power to bring a lot of consciousness to our experience. And that's
Uh-huh.
also what I'm hearing you describing for yourself
Yeah.
is really tuning into what's happening inside you.
Yeah.
Mm,
I'd rather my look be out, my focus be outward, but
mm.
no, it's, it's okay.
So what has worked for you? What would you say
Um,
is working?
Definitely time, which
Hmm.
people don't want to hear. You don't want to hear that this is going to take time and it
Hmm.
gets better because you don't. When I was in the grips of, waking up at 1:30 in the morning and, grabbing my phone, going into another room in the house and staying up till 4 or 5 o'clock scrolling on my phone doing and
Hmm.
you know I thought this is awful. I'm not going to live through this.
Hmm.
But time made a big difference, another huge difference, and I wish this for anybody listening is I had friends who believed in me, who
Hmm.
knew my daughter,
Hmm.
who knew her from birth, and knew me as a mom and believed in me. And these
Hmm.
are we were very liberal, left-leaning family. And these friends are very liberal, left-leaning people. And I didn't get pushback from them. I got
Hmm.
listening ears. I got
Hmm.
compassion. I got, uh, what a gift. I mean,
Hmm.
and I had more than one of them, a couple of friends like that. What a gift. They want to go for a walk. Are you okay? Um, that helped a ton because it helped me as a mom realize I'm a good mom. I'm still a
Yes.
good mom,
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that my reading of the situation that, Grace is female, born female. She's typical, ROGD, just typical,
Mm-hmm.
came out of nowhere. There was no
Mm-hmm.
masculine part of her, up that she showed nothing. So, my reading of her as a kid growing up, as a high schooler, as whatever was, all spot on. It wasn't like, well, oh, Kelly, you remember this part of her or that, No, there wasn't any of that. And there was a real gift, a huge gift.
Yeah. You said quite a few things that I want to hit on. You talked about being a good mom, and I wanted to bring this up before, that you have several children
Yes.
who it sounds like don't don't have the same struggles that this daughter does,
Oh,
your
no.
trans-identified
Yeah.
daughter,
I
right?
mean, not to identify myself because we have 5 kids,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, no, I mean, the other ones have had their typical, one who when he graduated from college decided he needed to go work on a pot farm in Oregon. And, I mean, all of them kind of figured their own things out, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they're all doing fairly well. None of them have any mental health issues. Couples struggle with anxiety once in a while. I mean, all typical part of living, part
Mm-hmm.
of living in 2024, or,
Mm-hmm.
part of living probably in 1824, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So,
Yeah, well, and I think that's important to recognize because you do have these other kids that show, yes, you are a good mom and we can't control everything.
no.
I come from a very large family and my mom has had to grapple with also plenty of grief and loss
Hmm.
with her children and such an array, right? The whole spectrum of functionality among
Right,
those kids.
right,
And so again, like it's interesting to have a large sample size where you can do
right.
that.
And I
I
have to
think.
say that
Mhm,
also was one of a big piece of me, what has helped, you
mhm,
know, and our oldest has 2 kids. I mean, having grandchildren, it's nothing better than that.
mm,
In my anger, one of the times I did say to my daughter, I have 4 other kids I can focus on. Like you can
mhm,
have your crisis and have your, whatever you got going on. I'm okay. I have
mm,
my 4 other ones that
mhm,
can fill up part of my life. And they shouldn't be my life at this point since they're adults, but and did help me, but probably not,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I do find that moms of only children, this can be really devastating. Yes,
Or
to
only daughters too. If she was
mhm,
my only daughter,
mhm.
yeah.
And only
Or
sons
only
going through the
sons.
same
Yep,
thing.
yep. One of
Hmm.
the yes, yes,
Hmm. Hmm.
yep.
Um, and so yes, I'm hoping it helps them to hear that, that if they don't have those other kids to even compare, you know,
Oh,
that 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 it, I think it can hit a little harder. And so
I agree, a
yes.
hundred percent. Yep.
So I'm
Or
hoping.
moms
Mhm.
who've lost. I have a friend who's lost both kids because one is trans identified, and because she's not accepting of the trans identified child, the other child is rejected mom.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Well, you talk about having good friends too, which has come up with community members recently, those who didn't feel or don't feel like they've had that they have been rejected from their communities.
uh-huh.
And I would agree with you. It is important to find people that can help you hold this and to
Yep,
not feel like you're holding it by yourself.
yep.
And so finding those people who can see you and ap- appreciate what you're going through and be there for you. And if you don't have those, I do want to let people know we do have this online community of moms that might be helpful with that if that is something that is missing in their lives, because I agree that's incredibly important. And not just for that, it's that sanity piece too. You talked about questioning reality,
Right.
and how this can really mess with your sense of reality and uh, stability if you don't have that. And so that is a really important piece of this. But also the time, that grief takes time, processing loss takes time, and having some self-compassion practices. And also, I think there too is finding some faith. And that's not something I've asked you about. I'm curious about that. Do you have
So I was
a
raised Catholic,
mhm,
K through 12 Catholic school. And interestingly, I reached out to my daughter recently, because my faith, the Catholic faith, was really, really important to me at the age that my daughter is now,
mhm,
between like maybe 22 and maybe 30. Um,
mhm,
so it was I don't know why, but I was leaving, right, the community of my family, or, you know, such as it was, little fractured and stuff. But and I really dug deep into the Catholic Church. Like
mm,
I was a lector. I taught, like, religious ed classes. Um, when my husband and I first met, it wasn't a deterrent to him, but he wasn't, he was not a churchgoer at all. He was raised Catholic too. Um, and I didn't agree with a lot of the Catholic Church stuff, especially with regards to women, and especially with regards to, well, I mean, look at the scandals with the priests and stuff now. But it was really important to me because of, kind of the social justice thing, which,
mm,
a lot of trans identified kids are into now. And yeah, but then, and we raised all our children Catholic, but we were very sporadic church goers, and didn't it just didn't feel like home anymore. So
mm,
probably since my 40s, early 40s, we've been more of somewhat, agnostic, and do not, go to church, and
okay.
don't. And I really have a problem with a lot of the world's big religions. But I
Mhm,
find it interesting that I needed that in my 20s. And this is the kind of insight that I could not get in my anger and despair. Like,
mm,
this came to me after that started dissipating.
mm,
Maybe some of this for my daughter is to have some type of, belief structure,
mhm,
and
mhm.
that has some of its little rituals and this and that.
Yes.
And
Mhm, mhm,
I needed that, and when I was, her age. And I did text her one day, just saying, I was thinking about this and how important it was to me. And, when I was, and didn't mention anything about the trans stuff, but that, I don't know why, just felt like I had to text you and let you know that. It was,
mhm,
but yeah.
mhm. As I've been making sense of it, that is definitely something that I've landed on, is that it does give that experience of a, a, a structure and a belief system, like you said, and even a bit of an initiation, isn't it, into a
Yep.
new person, which
Yep.
used to be very embedded in traditional cultures.
And meaning
Yes.
in life, a
Uh-huh.
meaning. Yep.
Yes. It's
It's a
kind of a
very,
religious experience, is what I think
yep.
it's actually is a religious experience that
I
they
agree. And something
are
that they
having.
need to
Hmm.
teach people. We're here to teach,
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with Eliza Mondegreen, but she
I do know
writes,
the name. Hmm.
yeah, a lot. And she did write something once. I occasionally still keep looking for it, about, the similarities between martyrs in the Catholic Church and
Uh-huh.
women's
Uh-huh.
bodies, and,
Uh-huh.
the payment of flesh. Um,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think about that with my daughter and the payment of her flesh for this.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I do find it interesting that it seems like the patterns repeat themselves, that there must be some reason for these rituals and rites and things that humans have, then that the absence of them, our kids will create them.
Right.
Hmm.
Which of course then leads me, oh, if we had kept her in the church somehow or made that important to her. But then I think, no, because I know this happens to people, having trans identified children in every,
Yep.
people that are heavily religious, people that
Yes.
weren't, people that, yeah. So,
Yes. Yes. Well, I think one of the most important things it does teach us is how little control we actually have.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. And we are better served when we as the adults or the parents have more control of ourselves
Hmm. Hmm.
and how we feel about it and think about it. At least in my interactions with my daughter, that's made a big difference. She doesn't have me to push back anymore about it.
Right. Yes. 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 Because we can come to represent their doubts for them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the more firmly we do push back, um, the further away we push them, I think. Yeah. Yeah. And it gives them it makes it easier, I think, to cut us off, you
Right.
know. So something to keep in mind, for parents, if that is your intent is to keep your family together,
Right.
that's important to consider. Um, you said something about early on you were a subscriber, but that you weren't ready to hear the message of the Stoic Mom Project. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you could
Yeah.
say a little bit more about that.
So, right. So I don't know where I found you.
Mhm.
But I was maybe gender a wider lens, maybe, because we got
Mhm.
into it just as things were starting to really like kind of burgeon with
Mhm.
the internet stuff, or my family got, you know, this came into our lives. And so I did subscribe for a while and would listen to your podcast, and then I felt like it was too positive for me. I
Mhm.
felt like I couldn't hear the message because it was, you're going to learn something from this. You're going to grow from this. And honestly, um, I was, like, F you.
Mhm.
I don't want this in my life. I
Mhm.
don't need to grow. I'm perfectly okay as I am. Maybe not perfect, clearly, but I am okay as I am. I,
Mhm.
you know, try to make life better for people. I'm, halfway decent human being. Like, I don't want this in my life. And there's nothing that can come from this that would be worth the pain I'm going through.
Mhm.
Especially after, my daughter's mastectomies. Um,
Mhm.
that was, I mean, I had told a friend of mine, if she goes ahead with the mastectomies, you're going to know because I'm going to be out in the woods by my house howling like
Mhm.
a wounded animal.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so anyway, so your message was like, I was like, yeah, forget it. No, 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 no. And then time,
Mhm.
and now, and interestingly, I met two friends, was on a vacation with two friends who are going through the same thing. And they were like, well, at least this experience brought us together. And I was like, "Ah, I would have rather not met you guys than go through this. And I meant it. Like
Mhm.
I had friends. I was okay not being friends with you guys. Like this wasn't worth your
Mhm.
friendships. And now I am in a different place where, you know, um, where I've ended up being a more grateful person, being less tribal politically, being skeptical of the things I read is a gift. I mean, it's
Mhm.
really a gift to me.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
still, I'm not sure if I could say it was worth my daughter's breast and the loss of her voice. I
Mhm.
don't think
Mhm.
so, but
Mhm.
I can't change that. That is what it is. So if that is what it is, and I can reap some gifts from it because I cannot change it, then that's where I'm at.
I want to go back real quickly to the
Yeah.
howling and pain in the woods
Yeah, yeah,
and how, again, we might need to go back to some of that. You know,
yeah,
that is part of being human. And that is how you let the pain move through you. Is you
right,
find somewhere where you can howl in pain, where you can get down on your knees and get
right.
loud.
What I did at first was rationalize.
Hmm.
And that helped for the first month. I rationalized that this means nothing. All it means is she can't breastfeed. That's all it means. This means nothing. All this means is she can't breastfeed. And, interestingly enough, when we spoke, the first time I spoke to her about it afterwards, she said one of the first things she said to me in a very panicked voice was, I can still get pregnant, I can still get pregnant.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't care. I don't, that's not what matters is you're closing doors on yourself. It's not whether you can get pregnant or not, if you ever have a child or not. It's that at your age, you have closed a door and you just don't do that at your age. Um, so I rationalized through it that it only means she can't breastfeed, and then I could start to deal with the pain of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um, so I know I have a tendency to do this, and you're talking about closing doors, and I think too this is painful because it's so obvious the doors are closing. Like we can see the doors, we have the wisdom to see that. And I think we're always opening and closing doors, you
mhm,
know. It's maybe more
yes,
subtle. We don't really know what we're closing the doors to or
right,
what doors are opening as a result of those closing doors. But that brings me to also the reorientation that you just described, right? Which is if I can't change this, how do I have a different relationship to it
right,
so that I can keep moving forward? And that is, right? That's the gift of reorienting to the things we cannot change,
right,
and finding what we can be grateful for. Yeah.
yeah. Even as we're cursing it.
Yep. Yeah. 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 Well, I think this has been a really rich conversation. I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability and that you took the time to have this conversation with me, Kelly. I'm curious if you
Yeah.
have any last words for listeners as far as the light at the end of the tunnel is concerned.
I think honestly, that just that, you really have to find your own, and I hate this, that your own truth about it. And
Hmm.
I think that that's what's helped me. In the very beginning, I said to a friend of mine, will not lose my family over this. I will not lose my family over this. This will not happen.
Hmm.
Um, because it could have.
Hmm.
And if I had dug into my anger and
Hmm.
just stayed angry or into despair. And I think once I came to terms with my truth about it,
Hmm.
I felt like, look you don't have to agree with me, but this is my truth around all of this. And I'm pretty secure in how I feel about it. I'm coming from a loving place about it,
Hmm.
despite my anger. This is coming from love. And that's helped. That's helped my family and the other
Hmm.
siblings just be like, hey, this is how I view it. And that's my truth. And, if you want to accept what she feels is her truth, that's great. But we both are, afforded respect and, your compassion about it. So,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's made my other children really see me as human, which I would have rather been more goddess-like. Um, but that's probably a good thing too. It's good for them. So, yeah,
Mhm,
anyway,
mhm.
yes. So that's where
Beautiful.
we are. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
You've been listening to Conversations Along the Way, part of the Stoic Mom Project. If you're interested in connecting with other moms who are supporting each other to grow through the most difficult things life will throw at us, we invite you to consider joining us in the S&P Online Community Center. This is a private, vetted community created specifically for moms who share this circumstance. For more information and to express interest in joining, please visit the S&P Community Center tab at stoicmom.substack.com to learn more, or simply fill out the application included in the show notes of this episode. Thanks for listening, and hang in there, Mama. There's light at the end of this tunnel.